Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. And on behalf of the CASA Forum, I welcome you to this joint webinar of CASA and Gunner Shot on Bangladesh and what's next in Bangladesh. Uh, to join me in this webinar are eminent personalities. First, let me welcome them. On screen, you see General Gautam Murthy and you see Ambassador Gautam Mukhopadhyay. General Atta Hasnain will join us very shortly. All of you are familiar with General Gautam Murthy. He's been coming frequently on webinars. I wouldn't introduce him to you, but General Ambassador Gautam Mukhopadhyay, he's come first time on Gunner Shot in this format. For your information, he's been our ambassador to Myanmar. He's also been our ambassador to Afghanistan. In fact, way back in 2001, he was just telling me after NDC, he went and set up the embassy in Afghanistan. So he knows Afghanistan very well, and as also Syria. He comes with a wealth of experience, ambassador for 3 countries. I mean, I don't need to introduce him more. Now, we all know, Bangladesh, we are just about a month past its monsoon revolution, right? What in the past 1 month things were turbulent. Now things seem to be settling down to some extent. ATMs have opened up, some sense of normal, for people to draw money, and limits on those drawals and all have gone down. Yeah, there comes General Hasnain. So, welcome. Good evening. Great to have you back.
Great to see Ambassador
Right.
Mukhopadhyay here also.
Yeah.
Wonderful, all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you, General Atta. Good to
Right.
see you.
So, as I was telling, sir, things are limping back to some sense of normalcy in Bangladesh. But then things are not exactly normal. There are a lot of shuffling around. The interim government is trying to do a lot of things. The political environment is still hazy. The political activity has not kicked in. It's after all just 1 month past this tumultuous revolution. What you have today is 175 million Bangladeshis who are completely, full of passion of revolution. I must say that they're all pretty industrious, hardworking, and a lot of them are disappointed in what's happened to them. And they have a certain amount of trepidation as to what their future is. But then they're all quite positive that they'll come out well. Right. But having said this, let's get to some real facts. We must understand that Bangladesh remains a country with very little natural resources, right? And it had developed over the past 15 years, especially its garment industry, with just the industry of the people. And they established a name for themselves. Their economy was doing well till the COVID. The COVID destroyed their economy. They had to go to the IMF. And then this event has happened. So they had to virtually restart their economy. Also, Bangladesh has a history, of violent power transfer. And any power transfer in Bangladesh has not been smooth. Invariably, the person who assumes power puts the other person in jail or finishes him off. So this history is there, and this has repeated itself after 15 years in some manner. In fact, in a more violent manner, or I wouldn't say violent manner, in a more assertive manner, right? And Bangladesh has this unique thing of being completely surrounded by India, except the small patch with Myanmar. I would say that Bangladesh and India are interlocked with each other, right? And their futures are largely dependent on each other. And that's how it is, whether it's water, electricity, oil, whatever it is, the basic issues are today largely flowing from India. But at the same time, post this revolution, where there's a feeling in Bangladesh that we were completely supporting Sheikh Hasina. And since Sheikh Hasina is in India, there is an antipathy towards India. And at the same time, there's a propensity to go towards China. which was already there even when Sheikh Hasina was there. In fact, if you all remember, Sheikh Hasina was good at playing out between India and China and all other powers, right? Also, it has shown an inkling of going back and reopening its relationship and normalizing its relationship with Pakistan, especially getting some ammunition from there and all that. So a whole lot of things are happening. Uh, to a large extent, uh, what's happening in Bangladesh has happened a little while back in Maldives. Started with the India Out program, where things went awry with them. And today, what is happening is the President Muzi is shortly going to come and visit India on a state visit, and already getting into some kind of seeking an FTA. The reality of India is sinking into Maldives, right? As much as what antipathy we see from Bangladesh, I think India needs to have strategic patience, and that bit of strategic patience is what General Hasnain has written about, and we'd like him to dwell on this and where we go in that, right? Uh, while we have to have this strategic patience and all that, we also have to realize that another neighbor of ours, Myanmar, which is quite close to Bangladesh, is also in some kind of a problem, and that problem has been there for the past 2 years. So we have got Ambassador Gautam Mukhopadhyay, who will bring in this connect between what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in Myanmar, and how does it affect India, and how does India navigate. So to that extent, today's webinar is not only what next in Bangladesh, what next for India in this complete region is the larger issue which needs to be addressed. With this, we'll start the webinar. My request to all those people from Bangladesh who are watching, and quite a lot of you have joined in, and I'm very happy. Please be positive in your thinking, because ultimately what we need to do is we have to go to a situation where India and Bangladesh are good neighbors. Whether at your own internal level, whatever you had with Sheikh Hasina is one different thing. India and Bangladesh as countries have developed reasonably good relations in the past 15 years. Our aim should be to take it forward, right? And I would like you to be positive in your outlook. And of course, you can have different outlooks, views about it. That's natural. And like I said, in this time where you've gone through quite an upheaval in the past, just about a month back, things are expected not to be completely normal. Okay. With this, I'd request General Gautam Murthy. Sir, please, the floor is yours. But before you start off, what I'd like to say is I'd request all of you to spend about 10 to 15 minutes on what you feel is okay, your views about the whole affair. I will not stop you. Just go ahead, because I dare not stop people of such eminence speaking to public at large, right? And then we'll see where we go. Take some questions or what I'll pick up questions from what you have said, and we'll have a discussion thereafter. The whole idea is to wrap it up in about an hour and 15 minutes. General Gautam Murthy, sir, all yours.
Thank you, General Shankar, for this very, very comprehensive introduction. Good evening to you, my fellow panelists. Good evening to the viewers of the channel, and welcome to our Kasas and Gunnershot 57th webinar on this subject. If you recollect our last webinar on Bangladesh, on the boil, that was the subject, had over 40,000 views. That just shows as how topical Bangladesh is, and how most of us who are thinking well for our countries, for India and for Bangladesh, feel about it and do not want a situation of turmoil. The situation continues, as General Shankar said, it remains complex, it is fluid, but at the same time, there is a semblance of order coming back. The interim government, which is headed by Dr. Mohammed Yunus, who we all know, and about a month, he's undertaken several initiatives to stabilize Bangladesh. but a myriad challenges remain. I will, in my part of the talk here, focus mainly on the challenges that Bangladesh faces and where it can go from here. Now, the key challenge which he was tackling was law and order, and continues to be law and order. The government has been dealing with widespread protests. Police were on strike. There were high crime rates. Although some progress has been made, restoring full law and order remains a critical challenge. And I do not know what pressure the government has come under, or rather, I think I know what pressure the government has come under. But leaders of banned organizations and over 20 notorious criminals have been released from jail on bail. Now, this has sparked widespread criticism amongst most Bangladeshis. The elephant in the room is the killing and the atrocities against Hindus by some Islamic fundamentalists. Although the killings may have stopped, but the Hindus living there as a minority are feeling threatened. Almost 52 districts were affected. On 1st August, actually just before losing power, the Awami League banned the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh and its student wing that we spoke about, the Islamic Chhatra Shibir. But on 28th of August, the new government has reversed its decision. Then the national holiday on August 15th, which was observed in honor of Sheikh Mujib's death, that has been revoked. The interim government also dissolved the Awami League's Judicial Investigation Committee. Several laws have been amended and many have been repealed, which had special provisions for security of Sheikh Mujib's family members. So internally, Bangladesh continues to be in a bit of a turmoil, though not as bad as it was right in the beginning. As far as the economic front is concerned, the economy is under great strain due to inflation, unemployment, and its huge reliance on government exports. The interim government is focusing on public spending and is attracting foreign investments, as we all know that Professor Mohammed Yunus is headed towards the US. The financial liabilities are huge. There is a total of, on the power sector alone, there is 800 million in 3.7 billion in debt. And Bangladesh is overdue on 492 million only to the Adani Group. So the interim government needs a financial assistance, and Professor Mohammed Yunus is the right man as of now to get this financial assistance. In fact, I'd like to tell your viewers that 10% of Bangladesh GDP comes from Indian industries that have invested in Bangladesh. So the most immediate impact we have seen is a slowdown, because instability creates uncertainty, not good for business, not good for manufacturing. We all know that. Even before this crisis took place, the inflation was on a 12-year high at 11.66%. Food inflation was 14.1%. This was before the revolution. So you can imagine what it has reached now. Job creation, unemployment, all these problems that bedevil the subcontinent is increasing in Bangladesh. Its foreign exchange reserves have drastically declined, and therefore Bangladesh needs to set in its house in order to improve on the economic front. Political landscape, we all know, is highly volatile. The government needs to create an environment which is conducive to fair and free as well as inclusive elections. And they have to manage the demand of various political factions, especially of the Jamaat-e-Islami and such other parties. Like in Pakistan, I'm afraid that these people, although they don't get the percentage of votes, but they punch well above their weight and have a serious impact on the polity over there. Gaining and maintaining public trust is very crucial to this interim government. It must demonstrate its ability to address the grievances of the population, particularly the youth, who have been a driving force behind these movements. The government has carried out some judicial reforms and administrative reforms. As we all know, it keeps coming about. The judges resigned and the new set have been sworn in. significant changes have been made, but let us see where this takes Bangladesh. Therefore, addressing the internal security issues, including the recovery of arms and ammunition, is vital for its long term stability. As far as foreign affairs is concerned, we have addressed Gautam Mukhopadhyay with that, and I therefore will not dwell on this. But yes, the government has done taken some decisions which which sound very puerile. Like, for example, banning the export of Hilsa to India during the forthcoming Durga Puja period. Although Professor Mohammad Yunus has very clearly stated, and his ministers have very clearly stated that no India-affected project, Indian project will get affected. But at the same time, actions like this undermine a lot of goodwill. The other elephant in the room, which I would like to dwell upon, is, as I said, is the fundamentalism, particularly what we have seen even during the last 15 years and earlier too. There is a disquiet within the government of India on this issue. Now, the present government of Bangladesh, the interim government, for the first time has included a Muslim religious leader in its so-called cabinet, the governing cabinet. The student leadership, student-backed government have very clearly said that they've pledged to pursue a policy against all kinds of discrimination and uphold the secular democratic principles. That is a very good sign that they have said it. But the freedom from that Bangladesh is now witnessing has also given rise and given space to these undemocratic, fascist, and fundamentalist elements to raise their ugly heads. There has been a vandalism rampant with destruction of some statues and sculptures, including that of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman that we all know. There have been series of incidents in which teachers in colleges and universities were forced to resign. And in one incident, a professor who had objected to Islamic prayer events inside the university was forced to resign. And the students forced him to listen to the recitals from the Quran. Several Sufi shrines have been vandalized. In fact, one of the fundamentalist speakers on August 30th, and that sort of surprised me, has said, "Long live Islamic fundamentalism. We believe in Islamic fundamentalism. None has been able to do politics, excluding Muslim fundamentalists, and none shall be able to." Now, these kind of statements are not, it's a democratic country. Anybody is free to say what they want. But as I said, this leads to a sense of disquiet. Amongst other incidents, a section of Bangladesh civil society members consider warning signs are public rallies, poster campaigns by a banned terror group, and the release of this Mufti Jaish Uddin Rahmani, who was the leader of the Ansarullah Bangla team, which was renamed as Ansar al-Islam. Now, the civil society of Bangladesh, let me tell your viewers, is opposed to this kind of thing, and no right-thinking person, because they have seen peace, they have seen economic growth, and everybody was benefited. But yes, perhaps Sheikh Hasina's regime went a little too far in being a strong one-party regime, and that led to her ouster. But besides that, the people of Bangladesh and the people of India have no quarrel really. The quarrel is within Bangladesh. And yes, there have been some rumblings against India, and that India, sort of put all the eggs in one basket and that sort of thing. But I don't think that's right. We are reaching out, and both the governments are headed by very sensible and eminent people, and they will be speaking to each other and seeing what best comes out of it. Apart from that, the Bangladesh, this leadership does not want to take, again, any hard approach against anyone at this moment, and therefore this kind of thing will continue. There will be people who will be speaking out, but my appeal and my understanding is that the government of the day, they should not get carried away, neither should India get distracted by these elements. and sort of get into knee-jerk reactions. Apart from that, there has been this call to change the national anthem of Bangladesh, which was vociferously turned down by the interim government to say that there is no question of this controversy coming up. And in fact, the religious affairs advisor, to his credit, has gone to say that those who attack places of worship are the enemies of humanity, they're criminals, and they will be prosecuted against the existing laws. But be that as it may, let us see how strong this government is in curbing this. And to my mind, the canary in the mine will be this year's Durga Puja and how it is observed by the Hindus of Bangladesh. Will it be observed with total freedom? Will there be curbs? Will there be incidents against their observance? It is left to be seen. In conclusion, all I'd like to say is that the interim government will continue to focus on restoring order, would be implementing reforms. But that said, the situation remains unpredictable and much will depend on how effectively these measures are implemented and whether the government can gain complete public support. Will the elections be announced this year? It's anyone's guess. Will the Awami League be permitted to participate? That again is a question that bothers some. So we shall have to wait and watch as to where Bangladesh is headed and what's next for Bangladesh. Thank you, General Shankar.
Thank you, sir. I think you made some very important points. Law and order is still a problem. The situation is unpredictable. Hindus remain, they feel threatened still. And a lot of revisionism underway, and which is to be expected in a situation of upheaval of this kind. Right, the economy continues to be under strain. Again, understandable. But they're trying to reopen the garment sector up. It was supposed to have opened up over the weekend. I don't know where it has gone. I suppose the news will come out. Bangladesh remains saddled with a huge financial liability, and inflation is running high. The major issue is that what you pointed out is that the interim government must go towards a political stability. Having stabilized the situation, have elections which are inclusive and encompass all parties, all sections of the society, and not, go with an Islamist strain to a fundamentalist strain, which is not good either for Bangladesh or for India and Bangladesh relations, right? And and important thing which you said is, in this time there are going to be knee-jerk reactions, which we need not have knee-jerk. Let's say knee-jerk actions need not trigger knee-jerk reactions from both sides, right? The positive thing which I see is the national anthem, which I think they have said no, it will not be changed, because there was not only the national anthem, there was a call to change the national flag also. Both have been turned down, which is good, right? It just indicates there's a deep sense of balance somewhere down below, which gives you some hope, right? What I'd like to say is, at this point of time, a lot of Bangladeshis are feeling entitled and anti-India. I agree, but a point which you made, which I'd like to highlight: it takes two hands to clap, right? And it takes two hands to build goodwill. And the idea is not to see what the sound of the clap is. The idea is to work towards building goodwill towards each other. Like I said in the beginning, we are neighbors. You can't wish that away. And we've got a border of 4,000 kilometers. You can't wish that away, right? We are interlocked with each other, and that's a phrase which I learned from our external affairs minister in one of his talks, which he said, right? Having said this, I now request General Atta Hasnain sir, your views. All over to you, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar. Thank you very much. Very, very timely.
Your voice, sir, your sound, if you could.
One sec.
Yes, sir. I think that will be.
Am I more? Am
Yeah,
I
better.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Right. Thank you very much once again. And I thought you started with a brilliant introduction, giving out the facts absolutely threadbare. Having said that, I
You're
am
still low,
while
sir. So your voice is still low. You might have to push it up. I can barely.
one sec, let me just push this.
Uh,
Better now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it okay? Can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Okay. Right. Uh, just got my chain of thought a little disturbed, but that doesn't matter. While I was listening to General Murthy, I was also reading all the comments which were coming on our website here. I was disturbed. Well, I do think that the government of India is handling this extremely well. We have not had a statement which has been out of place. You know, governments can tend to jump into situations where they perceive things going against them, things which they have carefully built over a period of time, relationships, etc. When they get overnight, when they get upset, you find all kinds of commentaries coming out of government. Government has not made a statement on this at all. And I think our foreign minister, our prime minister, everyone has treated this with a sense of equanimity and a sense of balance. I wish the same thing could be said for the comments which are coming here. Unfortunate. Very good. We have the freedom to comment. We are a democratic country. But remember, these are the comments which are hurting. And they are hurting both ways. It's not that from in the Indian side, these comments are going negative. They're coming from the other side too. I know that passions are alive at the moment. Lots of things. The streets are alive, perhaps to an extent. They are quietening down in Bangladesh. But it is not helpful for anyone. Just remember, we are wedded to each other. We are interlocked, as John Shankar just said. We are interlocked with each other. And you can't choose your neighbors. You can't take them away.
Correct.
So the best thing is to look at these situations as temporary situations, passage of times. Human emotions are inevitable. They come up. We are not made in any godly way that there will be no emotions and there will be no sentiments. They will be there. Perhaps we have gone wrong. I'm not saying that. We may have gone wrong in our commitment, overcommitment to one side or the other in Bangladesh. That's something debatable. We can keep discussing that, right? But at the end of the day, what is the best thing for the people of Bangladesh and what is the best thing for the people of India? To roll back the situation and come back to an element of stability. I have written an article on this morning, which appeared in the New Indian Express. It was termed strategic patience. It was on strategic patience. And I looked at Ukraine, and I looked at Gaza, and I looked at Afghanistan, and different areas around the world. And I observed the Indian policy towards everything. We have retained our composure. We have retained our equanimity and sense of balance right through. And you see the manner in which the Honorable Prime Minister, when he went to Ukraine, the statements that he made came out from there. What has emerged from it? Nothing in a hurry at all. Hurry in this kind of a situation can lead to all kinds of awkwardities. And if there is such a word. But my appeal to people, please hold your passions, hold your sentiments at this time of the year, our passage of times, and you will find this will go away. And then when you see this with a sense of balance, automatically solutions will come. You see what happened in Sri Lanka, right? I think it's a very good case study. And you see the relationship today, right? Yes, I know there are elections taking place and there's a likelihood of a change of government and some different ideologies coming in, etc. And lots of people are contemplating what's going to happen. But the last couple of years, ever since 1987, when we went into Sri Lanka, the situation was very, very dynamic, up and down. The people of Sri Lanka were very upset with India at most times. But you've seen in recent years how we have overcome it. In the worst of times, Sri Lanka received a $4 billion loan assistance, actually, to get them out of the woods of the economy. So this is how you have to look at being neighbors. Now we understand fully that the situation on the streets is it's only 5 weeks down at the moment. We are only 5 weeks away from what could be called a revolution in Bangladesh, and no harsh words need to be spoken by us in India. It is for the people of Bangladesh to decide what they wish to do, what government they wish to have, but the implications of that on our security must not be negative. This is important for us. This is what they have to remember. We wish Bangladesh well. We wish the people of Bangladesh well. Remember, our national security, India's national security, is intertwined with you in Bangladesh. We cannot wish that away at all. Right? We've got a vulnerable Northeast. We are aware of the intents of our other adversaries, and without naming anyone, looking at that area, perhaps at the moment, very, very happy that they're wringing their hands and saying, okay, this is the ideal situation for them. Temptations galore, some sleeper agents and sleeper networks, etc., being reactivated. All that is fine. Can go on. We will neutralize that in times to come. But just understand that it's important for us to continue to be looking at each other, being engaged with each other in a positive manner and not with any sense of negativity. What are the issues here at the moment? In terms of national security, Jan Murthy has already spoken most of the things in terms of the situation internally in Bangladesh. In terms of national security, I would put number one, the issue of communalism. I would be the unhappiest to see the targeting of any of the minorities. I'm a member of the minority community in India, and I think I can display a model here for people to see, right? Why shouldn't there be an equivalent element like me in Bangladesh who should be able to speak up and say, I feel very safe and secure in my country? I'm sure there are many of them, right? And I was in Bangladesh some years ago, and I still remember 28,000 pandals. This is just before Diwali that I was there, before Durga Puja. And I was told by the Bangladesh army, the people who were escorting me around there at that time, that, sir, we have got 28,000 pandals in Dhaka. And
Wow.
all of them are going to be live, absolutely. And you see the kind of Durga Puja that we have in Dhaka, it can parallel, it can match Kolkata. That is the kind of intensity with which Durga Puja is celebrated here. So when Jan Murthy says that is a important juncture when we arrive at the time of Durga Puja next month, the ability of the minority community to celebrate that, and what Bangladesh should feel proud about is to project to the world, we've had a revolution, we have decided to do so and so, and yet our people, no one is to be harmed. We will protect them. I'm so glad I was hearing news that possibly many of the madrasas are going to be recruited to make sure that they patrol and they ensure the security of all the minority elements of the minority community in Dhaka and other cities. What a great model you will present to the rest of the world. You will perhaps present a fantastic model to the whole of South Asia. You will present that model to Pakistan in a huge way. Right? So this is the kind of thing that we should be looking at, projection of positivity. Because it is this which will ultimately lead to, I'm not looking at solutions. There are no solutions here. It's a question of maximizing our comfort levels with each other. I thought we had achieved a fairly high comfort level, which has now taken a downturn suddenly. I've served with the Bangladesh army. And I can tell you, in difficult times, I was there with them in Rwanda. And I can tell you, we had the best sense of cooperation between the two countries and the two armies. I have I have visited Bangladesh. I've visited all the military institutions in Bangladesh. And I can tell you, our exchange of sentiments and emotions about our history, the past, our jointness, etc., everything. I think Bangladesh puts that aspect on a pedestal and keeps that as a very important element of its relationship with India. We similarly do that. I, for one, would always be one of the first things I did when I came to Dhaka was to go to the Martyrs Memorial, go to the museum, and have things like that, because those are the things which excite us. How did things happen here in 1971? How did Bangladesh create itself? Whatever support from India came, it was different, but how did it create itself? So these are some of the aspects which need to be revisited from time to time to keep the positive sentiments going. As I said, the most important aspect is to ensure there is just no negativity at this particular time. If you really look at it, sit down together and discuss, you will find that our differences between India and Bangladesh are far lesser than the aspects of convergence of our interests. As just brought out, economics. Well, India is on the rise, fastest growing large economy of the world. We will be the third economy, hopefully the second largest economy in the future, inshallah, one of these days. In the future, we are looking at a $5 trillion, a $10 trillion economy. When that happens, the region goes with us. It's not just India which develops. And dare I say, Bangladesh has a record of 25 million people being lifted from poverty. While just the virtue of its development economics. And who better than Muhammad Yunus Saab, who can talk about development economics? So it's not a question of Bangladesh bandwagoning on India. It's a question of how can we do this jointly? Because this is going to not only the growth of Bangladesh, not only going to be helpful to us otherwise in the rest of India, but the northeast of India particularly. And we've got Ambassador Gautam Mukhopadhyay who will speak about this, I'm sure. He's an absolute expert on the northeast, knows that area backwards. Obviously, the development of that area is hugely linked to how things develop in Bangladesh. And I can tell you, both the economies of those regions, the region and the nation, can grow conjointly together. The other aspect is power. India is today, mercifully, with a lot of investments which have happened from the private sector, etc., and infrastructure which has gone in, we have a lot of power available with us today. Bangladesh is slightly deficient of power. I'm sure that all this can be made up through availability from India. This is something which will keep the Bangladesh economy going. We cannot afford to have a downturn in the Bangladesh economy at all. You are one of those. In fact, the Bangladesh economy is maybe considered virtually like one of the Asian tiger economies of the past. That's yes. What it had come to almost, right? And you can't see a downturn in this happening in this current times purely because the streets are in turbulence. No. There is a question somewhere in the question box. Is the textile industry, is the clothing industry from Bangladesh shifting into India? Well, there are lots of rumors which keep floating around on all these things. I don't think decisions of this kind are taken overnight like that with situations. We should be a little more mature in looking at this. If Bangladesh retrieves the situation, if the leadership retrieves the situation, democracy returns fully. You have a stable government in place. You have a good relationship with the neighbors. There's no reason why the marvel that you have created in terms of the industry, textiles and the clothing industry, should not retain its place, the primacy, $60 billion worth of exports, which you have been able to achieve over the past, something which can be restored completely. So one can go on and on these various aspects, but I strongly believe that one of the very important aspects which will happen here is military diplomacy. Diplomacy is one aspect, but military diplomacy is another. We have got a very eminent diplomat with us. I request him to also talk about this aspect. We have got a wonderful relationship with the Bangladesh Army, the Bangladesh Armed Forces. We've got a historical relationship. I personally consider it to be a very, very professional force. And I think in this entire issue which has happened so far, it has stood out as an element of a complete sense of balance. And I think with whom India can ensure that it becomes a kind of a wire media with the people to ensure that we continue to maintain a sense of balance and equanimity. I think I will not go beyond this because there's a lot which already has been covered. This issue of radicalism, fundamentalism, Rohingyas, Myanmar, all this is linked to everything which I have already spoken about. I think this is really the time when we should be just wishing that the situation, I mean, it should just play itself out, burn itself out, as it says. Because it's not necessary to react and respond to every statement coming out under these circumstances, every action which is being taken. You'll find in 6 months' time, we will be discussing this in another webinar here itself, and I'm sure the stance that we see in the various remarks, the comments on the comments box, will be very, very different at that time. Thank you very much for your time. God bless and Jai Hind.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you outlined the whole story of strategic patience very well. Right? One has to wait, not react to every situation, not react to every word which is being spoken, and not be antipathetic to each other. Just have patience to absorb what comes and not honestly shoot our mouths off. That's, I think, very important. And you said just about 5 weeks after all it's happened, there's a big upheaval in a nation. It'll take time. It's a wound which is going to heal. Every wound takes time to heal, and that healing time will not run away. Right. I think you conveyed a very important thing. So, like you said, this is the third time I'm having this talk on various fora on Bangladesh. I see a lot of, I would say, hate coming out of Bangladeshis and Indians, both. It is some kind of whether it is started off as, just as a reflex moment, I won't understand. No, but I think we need to reduce this. We need to reduce this rhetoric. We need to reduce the fact that we start pointing out defects with each other and point out who's done mistake and who's not done a mistake. ये तू तू मैं है ना, is good for soap operas, not between nations, right? That's my desi way of putting it. And what General Hasnain has said, which is very important, and we keep this thing. It is not only being interlocked with each other, or security is also intertwined with each other.
Yes.
It's not only Bangladesh, it's India also. And we both have to recognize each other's red lines, right? You have your problems, we need to understand it. We understand it very well. You also understand it very well. But that's a thing which we need not cross over and over again, because that crossing these red lines only results in ill feelings with each other. I thought in the past 15 years, this enclaves being sorted out or border being straightened out contributed a lot to the understanding of the whole story. Because I remember going back, way back with all these enclaves, managing the Tripura border used to be a problem. Because, half a house used to be on one side and the other half of the house on the other side. Virtually something like that. So those things have been sorted out well. And I think that goes further. I do understand that the river water, treaty and, those talks have to make progress. But they'll make progress only when we talk with each other and trust each other. Right? And there are inimical powers, inimical both to Bangladesh and to us, which we have to get together and resolve, because these powers don't mean any good to Bangladesh. That I can assure you. Having seen Bangladesh right from younger days, right from the time I was second lieutenant when I went to Binaguri, which is quite close to the North Bengal border. This thing one has seen, right? We need not allow communalism to raise its head unnecessarily, and to that extent, I think the Durga Puja is not only, I wouldn't like to call it an acid test of what Bangladesh is. I think there's a great opportunity, like what General Hasnain said, to project what Bangladesh is all about inclusivity and positivity. And then he made a point about the professionalism of the army. I've also interacted with, in fact, all of us have interacted with the Bangladesh army at some point of time or the other. In fact, some of my students were from Bangladesh army. Just around the time Bangladesh got independence, I'm going back to 80, 81. Right, I've taught Bangladeshi officers, and I found them to be outstanding then, and they remain so even now. We've had good relations. Military diplomacy is something which we need to build on, because that is something, military to military relations are very good. Most of us have done NDC and Higher Command and LDMC and all those major courses with Bangladeshi officers around us, and even staff college, right? And I think we have a tremendous shared history, which again General Hasnain pointed out, of 1971, which we need to build on, because that is something which all Indians connect with, and that is something with 1971 is something which with all Bangladeshis connect with. That's a common point of our history, indelible. It cannot go away. There are no two ways of that history, or there are not two sides of that history. It's only one side, right? And we need to look at our divergences less and look at congruences more. That's what he said. And look at the development economic models. Revive the development economic model of Bangladesh, and which was pioneered by Professor Yunus long back, right? And the garment industry, I also agree with what General Hasnain said. Look, it's disrupted at this point of time, but within 1 month, no one will shift orders wholesale to outside the country. These things take time. They will revive. But the rider here is they will revive only if there's stability within the country. If there's political stability in the country, people will
Yes.
come back to Bangladesh. If that doesn't happen, well, you'll run into problems. That's something which we are also looking forward to. That how fast will political stability come back into Bangladesh? Sir, thanks for all the comments. I now request Ambassador Gautam Mukhopadhyay. Sir, all yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. Thank you, General Murthy, for that excellent introduction, and General Atta, of course, for your, extremely wise remarks just before me. Let me say that I have a bit of a cardinal rule that I don't actually speak on countries where I have not served and where I cannot claim any special expertise. So I am going to take, and especially since almost everything has been said, and I particularly echo the words of General Atta, when he counsels strategic patience, when he says that, this is a time for passions on both sides, and we can see that in the chat box as well, that this is a time that, in fact, it's a time of transition. And it's time that I think we don't need to react to every abuse or insult that is hurled towards each other. And so my point here would be that I think it would be fitting to start by actually looking a little introspectively into our own selves, whether the situation that we are faced in could possibly have been avoided, whether the reactions that we are seeing today are avoidable, and whether in fact we can work towards a more stable relationship that we are fated to have as neighbors, neighbors that share 4,000 kilometers of borders as well. So I think I'll just make 2-3 points about Bangladesh, because I think in many ways this also impinges on our larger foreign policy, and I'm going to look at this from that point of view. So one point is, we have seen the characterization of what's happened in Bangladesh in various terms, that it's an American color revolution, that it's anti-India, that it's Islamist, that it's pro-Pakistan, that it's anti-Hindu, that it's not spontaneous, that it's in fact not pure, that it is, a conspiracy largely directed, perhaps we tend to view towards India and so on. I think, these kind of reductionist, one-dimensional explanations are not helpful. What we are seeing on an occasion like this, in a kind of massive upheaval, virtually a revolution, is a confluence of many, many strains, many, many currents, just as, as full of of channels as Bangladesh itself is. So I don't think it would be fair to describe, as many of us I think in India tend to do, in very one-dimensional terms. We need to get over that completely. But I think we have to face, a couple of important facts. That is that it was an anti-Hasina revolution, that it was anti-authoritarian, that it had democratic impulses. It also had some Islamist and anti-Indian and even anti-Hindu impulses. I think we cannot deny that. That Indian properties, Indian symbols, even Hindus were attacked. I think these are all part of what happened. But the, the key question is, I think anybody from India who ever went to Bangladesh knew that the pot was simmering, that it could boil any time over. And until it happened, I didn't see voices in India that predicted something was going to happen. I didn't see voices even amongst the critics in India who gave suggestions as to what it was possible to do in order to prevent that kind of explosion. And I would say that in some respects, again, Bangladesh also needs to look a little introspectively, which is that there was a total polarization, a political polarization in Bangladesh that did not permit Indian policymakers to even move one foot this way or that way to explore possible options. Maybe these are certain limitations of our own foreign policy, not being able to create the kind of space in which we can operate, and not find ourselves polarized. So, we have had an euphoric moment when this revolution took place. But like all revolutions, we need to look at the day after. We've had what happened in the Arab Spring, glorious moments, but ultimately, let's see, Tahrir Square led to the Muslim Brotherhood and then finally led to a kind of version of army rule back again. We need to look at what's happening in Bangladesh from this point of view. This is not going to be a straight line. We need to look at the positive voices. And I think some of the points that both General Murthy and General Atta pointed out, that there are positive voices in terms of secularism. There is the idealism of youth. There are the students who are still there. Maybe in the end, that spontaneity will be taken over by political forces. But if we emphasize the negative, we will only get more negativity. If we emphasize the positive, if we pick up the positive voices and start, responding to those, then we have a better chance of creating a political space in which we can find an equilibrium and a kind of, cohabitation. And so I think, that's one key question that I would like to pose, make. The second is, the point that I think General Atta said, which is at a time like this, at a time of great froth, it is best for us to just simply lie low. India is a big country. We are neighbors. If we need Bangladesh, Bangladesh will need India. There will come a time when I think we realize each other's importance. India also knows very well that whatever mistakes it makes as a big country, eventually our neighbors will need India at some point or the other. This happened in Afghanistan, which I know very well. Even the Taliban, who were basically seen as, at that time, Pakistan's creatures, came to see what reality was. We have a perfectly good working relationship with the Taliban now, and it's Pakistan who has a negative relationship with the Taliban at this moment. So India is a big country. It can make mistakes and it can also correct its mistakes, and its neighbors will also realize sometime or the other that you cannot do without each other. So I think a little calmness in this respect is good. So at this point of time, while passions are high, it's best for us to lie low, best for us to preserve that strategic patience and wait for the day when people, both sides, will realize that we have much more to gain by cooperation. And let me tell you, for all the bad things that may have happened during Begum Hasina's time, this was a time, until COVID came and many other developments took place, that Bangladesh was prospering, that India-Bangladesh relations had eased to the extent that there was much greater trade, there was much greater investment. We've all spoken about it. There was much greater movement on transit than there has ever been in India-Bangladesh or India-East Pakistan history. So there were many positive developments during this period which were linked to Bangladesh's prosperity that we should not forget and that we should work to develop on. But one final point that I'd like to make, and this is again relates to Indian foreign policy, that India as a big country and has internalized this kind of big brother kind of attitude, that our paradigms in terms of our relationship with the neighbors are cast in the big brother mold. So you either have the good big brother or you have the bad big brother. And so countries have to choose. There are some people who say, no, we will be the tough big brother. We don't care about our neighbors. And then we had the Gujarat doctrine that went to the other side and talked about, basically being nice to your smaller neighbors. I think both these models, both these paradigms are patronizing. And I think it's about time that we got out of this patronizing mold and move towards a mold of mutual respect. I think one of the chat contributors also made this point, that we need to move away from this whole idea of, my country first, started by the Americans, but now emulated by everyone. We need to rediscover an area, not just of self-interest, but of mutual interest and also enlightened self-interest. There is a whole spectrum that we can work on. And we need to move away from a kind of relationship of a patronizing relationship towards a much more level relationship. A level relationship which is not necessarily transactional, but which also builds upon the common cultural, religious, the huge the huge demand for Indian visas, whether it is to travel or it is to shop, pilgrimages in India, including Islamic pilgrimages in India, the huge sort of common pool of culture that we have, interest in our education centers, business, of course, and of course, many trans-border issues that we cannot work on. Sundarbans is one, climate change is another, global warming is another, the impact on the delta, the impact on salinity inside Bangladesh. These are all areas that we have to work on. So I actually want to then transit a little bit into Myanmar, because again, we have a challenge coming up. Bangladesh, we knew what was happening, but we did not know what to do. We knew that Bangladesh was going to explode, but we did not know how to deal with the transition. We closed our eyes until it happened. Now, we are facing a very similar problem in Myanmar. In Myanmar, too, we are dealing with in fact, in Bangladesh, it was much more hidden. In Myanmar, it's much more open. We are dealing with an extremely unpopular military government that has been in power since the 1960s, that in the last 10 years, to some extent, eased because of initially civilian USDP rule, in other words, military-backed rule, and then subsequently civilian NLD rule, not completely democratic, but nevertheless at least civilian and democratic rule. And then you had the coup of 2021, February 1, 2021, which has reversed all the progress that took place in Myanmar in terms of liberalization, political reforms, media space, opportunities for the youth that had come up since the liberalization in about 2011, starting 2011 to 2021. And once again, we are finding ourselves in a policy paralysis. There have been a lot of developments since 2021. Initially, when the coup took place, the first response to the coup was peaceful civil disobedience movements, peaceful protests, street protests. These were suppressed very harshly by the military. And then you had the situation that ordinary people, ordinary youth from the Burma population as well as from the ethnic areas simply took to arms. Initially, they started with flintlock rifles. The Burma simply did not even have their own militant or insurgent organizations or pro-democratic armed organizations. They went to the ethnic armed organizations, ethnic resistance organizations, got trained, and in the course of the next 3 years, starting with October last year, what we have seen is massive gains by the armed opposition all over Afghanistan, all over Myanmar, even while The civil disobedience movement continues to consolidate itself and has started the rudiments of a parallel administration. And once again, we have a situation where the armed opposition has taken over the Northeast Regional Command, unprecedented in Myanmar's history. It has very recently, one of the groups, the Arakan Army, has taken over a naval base uh, close to Bay of Bengal. In other words, two major army and navy bases have fallen to the armed opposition. About 80 towns have come under the control of the opposition. You have nascent political organizations like the Committee of Parliamentarians, like the National Unity Government, National Union Consultative Committee. You have armed coalitions like the Three Brotherhood Alliance. You have other armed organizations like the Karenis and the Chins who have started their own rudimentary organization. All over Myanmar, there is ferment. And it's difficult to predict because the army has such overwhelming monopoly of force. It's difficult to predict what will happen when. And of course, none of these things are ever predictable. And I think that's one of the lessons that we should learn from this. But the key point is this, that in 3 years, despite the strength of the Myanmar army has lost ground, has lost battlefield positions, has lost regional commands, has lost major regional command bases as well as a naval base. And the direction seems to be going only one way. And now what we are seeing is other tendencies. You are seeing the Chinese moving in much more in support of the junta, the military junta, in order to prevent a complete breakdown or a complete takeover by the armed opposition. And the more the Chinese get into the country, we'll see other powers like perhaps the United States getting into Myanmar in proxy positions. Increasingly, more and more of the border with India has fallen into the ranks of the armed opposition. Most of the trading posts around Myanmar, whether it's the Indian side or in the China side or in the Thai side, are falling to the armed opposition. And once again, we are in a position where we are still going along with the flow, unable to read the writing on the wall and to be able to make the necessary course corrections. So in Bangladesh, we were caught by surprise. In Myanmar, we still have the opportunity to step back and review our options and see what we could do. So I would just leave my intervention at that.
Thank you, sir. I think you made some very, very, very interesting point. The first thing which you said was revolution is multidimensional. It is not. It's going to take its own course. It's not a straight line. The outcomes are still not known. But what India has to realize is it's essentially anti-Hasina. There's no doubt. Hasina is history, and we have to deal with the new dispensation, whichever comes our way. And we have to deal with it with both hands and both, with all our senses in the right direction, right? And there will be impulses, negative impulses coming in all shades and all dimensions, which we need to sift and keep out. Otherwise, these irritants will only be sandpapers in our relationship. And we need to do a lot of introspection in India and Bangladesh. It is not a one-way street. Like I said, we need two hands to clap. Right. We need to build on the positives, and especially in Bangladesh, I think Bangladesh has a lot of opportunity. Well, the monsoon revolution is fine to talk of. It has dangers and opportunities. The idealism of youth is something which they have to capitalize on, or they will go back into regressive politics which existed in Bangladesh in the first 15-20 years. A good part of their growth story initially. When I say growth story, the growth story as a nation, right? Bangladesh will need India because it's still simply the bigger nation and the more prosperous nation. And Bangladesh also has to realize that India has weathered its neighbors. Our relationship with neighbors has been always episodic. It's never been straight. Whether you look at it Maldives, whether you look at Sri Lanka or Afghanistan or Bangladesh itself, and even with Myanmar, right? We've had phases of having very good relations. We have had phases of very mediocre relations. And so we know. And today, the Taliban model and the Maldives model, if I call it a model, are good markers for Bangladesh to assess how India will always hold your hand, which I think that is very important. But everyone in Bangladesh should understand. We know that Bangladesh is going through a difficult period, and India is next to you holding your hand, notwithstanding what kind of a feeling you are now emoting at this point of time. I'll discount it completely. Right. We need to build on the good things which have happened in the past 15 years, notwithstanding Hasina or your views internally, trade and transit relations. We need is important. India needs to get out of its patronizing attitude. I think that's a very important self-correction which we have to make. Uh, and we have to move to an area of mutual self-interest. Then, of course, so you you outlined the larger issues which is happening in Myanmar, where there's an unpopular junta in power for ever since we've known it, barring the period when Aung San Suu Kyi was in power, with the armed opposition, gaining ground each day. Uh, what strikes me about the whole thing which you said is that the military struggle is going to be long. The political stability reaching after the military struggle finishes is going to be even longer. Seeking any kind of stability in Myanmar is going to be a very, very long time. I don't see the wall, leave alone the writing, which is even farther away. Right. Relatively, I think Bangladesh things are little more at this point of time. You can see through a lot of things. You can see the shape of things which they come, though they're hazy. It's a little more predictable compared to Myanmar. But overall, the point which all of us have to understand and take away is both these countries are going to be in some kind of turbulence at least for the next 4 to 5 years. And with our own issues in the Northeast, we have to take some hard decisions. We have to do some hard introspection as to how do we deal with our problems, like in Manipur. I mean, I have no this thing in saying it openly, with drones coming up out there, and news of drones coming up and rockets coming up, and this spillover of problems from Myanmar entering into Manipur. And the day is not far when the problems from Bangladesh will go into to our northeast, and our northeast problems start finding harbor in Bangladesh. These are the dangers which we have gone through, and we need to be alive to the whole thing, right? All of you have observed the commentary which has come today in terms of how people have reacted. Largely is their own feelings which have come out, which is good to the extent that their feelings are coming out, right? And I don't see many questions, so I'll put out a few positive feelings